comments on it. All right. Okay, ready? Here we go. What?
What the fuck you did with your hair?
Shashi, confidence builder, Shramali.
I'm so glad I'm recording this. That's gonna go into the next Christmas edition.
That's a cold open right there.
Yeah. Welcome to another episode of Consultants Saying Things. I'm Chris Lockhart. Today, we're joined by Shashi Shramali, Phil Yanoff, and we have a guest, Hussain Bandukwala. And Hussain is a PMO coach for Pravaz Consulting. And today, we're actually going to be talking about project management and what the function really of a PMO, project management office or organization, is in today's agile enterprise. So give us a 2-minute version of what do you do? What is a PMO coach?
I have a background in management, technology consulting, and I've worn project and program management hats, and also had the opportunity to set up PMOs for companies as well. But then I realized that, in a lot of cases, PMOs aren't doing really, really well. And there are many reasons for that, and I'm sure we're going to get into all of that during our chat. But one of the reasons that I believe that that's the case is that PMO leaders aren't really ready for the role when they're thrust into that opportunity. And it's not a fault of their own. And again, we can talk a lot about that as well. But the bottom line is that a lot of the reasons why PMOs fail is because the people who are in charge of them don't really know how to get it up the first time right. And so I saw that as an opportunity, and I thought, maybe I can go ahead and help fellow PMO leaders to make it work for them, so that they don't have to Google stuff up. They don't have to go ahead and piecemeal things together. They don't have to figure it out while building relationships, figuring out a roadmap, trying to convince the value of something that really should be there, and so on, so that they have something that's set and tested that they can apply immediately to their situations. And that's why I'm there. And that's why I want to go ahead and call myself a coach versus a consultant, because I'm not in there to do it for them. I'm there to sort of help them figure it out. And once they're self-sufficient, then, that's it for our engagement. So that's what I do.
That's really interesting, because you and I knew each other when we were both consultants for the same firm back in the day. And I'm kind of curious how you went from consultant to coach. Like, how did you get where you are, right? Because it's an interesting transition.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people will argue to the T either way that certain work that I'm doing is still consultant-ish versus coaching, and then people start going into the definition of coaching. But for me, the concept is really simple, right? Teaching the man how to fish. That's really what I'm doing. There's a lot that goes in to setting up a PMO, from discovery to execution. And I know that in the work that I do, I'm not doing all of that. I'm empowering the PMO leaders to do that. And I'm sort of, their sounding board, their cheerleader, their mentor, their advisor, their outside and expert as it's going along. And, I do enjoy the world of being a consultant. And but that transition just sort of happened very naturally.
Are you giving examples? Are you doing workshops? How does it typically go?
No, I'm glad you asked that, and because of the way the work has transitioned. To be honest, I'm sort of banging myself on my head in terms of why did I name my company Pravaz Consulting Corporation, right? Because I'm not really a consulting company. I'm really an educational providing company. And so, in addition to my coaching engagements where I'm working with someone side by side and in making things happen, I also provide workshops. I do webinars. I write blog posts. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, providing advice over there. And then I also have courses. So I have a course on LinkedIn Learning
Chris, if you're done interviewing, should we start ripping project management apart?
Nice.
Bill's not here. Bill's not here to interject that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do that, right? So there is I'm like many people under the. I mean, I would love to hear from you, Hussein. Many people under the what do you say cover of calling themselves as project managers are
Yeah.
essentially nothing more than project administrators,
Yeah.
right? So how would you differentiate between somebody playing the role of a project administrator versus a true project manager?
Yeah, and let me throw in another word, another phrase that's going around out there, Shashi. It's project leader, right? Because management is not enough, and so leadership is being thrown under the bus as well here. But that's a great question, and honestly, that's one of the reasons why PMOs have such a bad rep. According to the Association for Project Management, 50% of PMOs fail 3 years after after they've been set up. So if you ask me to set up a PMO today and ask me, hey, Hussain, will this be successful? I could literally flip up a coin and say heads is going to succeed and tails is going to fail in 3 years. And I know we're going to be talking about the value of PMOs, but PMOs can be far more valuable to organizations than the probability of a coin toss. And if somebody's there who's just taking orders, who's just doing things in a very templated way, who's not putting their thinking cap on, who's not showing a bit of a spine in their backbone, they're your administrators, right? They're there who are just going to be taking orders. They're not really managing. They're definitely not leading. They're just doing what they've been told. And I see a lot of people with a lot of credentials and a lot of experience falling under that project administrative category, sadly so. A lot of people just want to get those credentials, if you will. A lot of alphabets after their names, but it's they're not applying that in real life. They're not applying that in how their leadership, how their stakeholders really want them to lead their project successfully.
So I think majority of every time in most of the time in my career when I run into a project manager, I discover after a few days they are being project administrators. So you end up stepping back and rethinking what value are they bringing to the table. Do you really need somebody with 15 years of experience being a project administrator versus you can hire somebody right off school and they play the role of project administrator. Another thing is, these consulting firms, right? They have this whole, you see smirk on my face. They have this whole offering around program value realization. I think in my experience, it's nothing more than program management. What's your thoughts?
I've also heard it called delivery assurance, by the way.
Oh yeah. That's another one. Delivery assurance, yes. Program value realization, delivery assurance, whatever you want to call it. Value realization sounds more consultative and fancy, by the way. Delivery assurance, okay, assurance is like, it's not sexy enough.
It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
There's no difference. The ultimate thing that we need to do as project managers or program managers or portfolio managers or PMO leaders is to make sure that things get done.
Right.
And things get done in not just on time, on budget, on quality, under scope, whatever, but rather what the reasons for the projects or the programs or the portfolio were there, those get realized, right? So the funny thing that I see in projects everywhere, in programs everywhere, is that we're going to spend, tons and tons of effort and resources and thinking cap on to build that business case, right? We're figuring out like all these different ways to analyze what benefits the project can bring to the table so that it can pass through the intake process. And then once that's done, once the project's approved, once the program's approved, then nobody really looks at the business case. Nobody really looks at what's going to happen, how the project is actually going to help the company, why it's actually being set up. why it's actually being executed. And that is the unfortunate part. So, you can call it any sort of fancy term, program value realization, benefits realization, ROI, whatever you want to call it. If nobody's keeping an eye on those things that you promise at the start of the project, then it doesn't really matter how much on time, how much on budget your project was.
Shashi and Chris too, I think, have presented some of the things that go wrong, obviously, inside of this thing. But I'm kind of curious from your perspective, when does someone come and say yes to you? I mean, do they have a problem they're bringing to you to begin with, and what does that normally look like? I mean, where do they say it hurts when they say we need Hussain to help us?
Yeah, so there are a few situations that I've seen. The first one is rare. The second one is more common. The rarity is that their people are proactive enough to realize that, okay, you know what, things are beyond control, and they can bring someone in. So they realize it's a bit of a wild west situation. They have a few project managers on the team. Everybody's doing their own thing. Sponsors have different or stakeholders have different experience with different project managers. But the bottom line is that things there are a lot of things on the go, but none of them are crossing the finish line. And they're like, all right, you know what? We probably need to bring some order to chaos, and let's go ahead and set up a PMO. That's one situation. The other situation is they realize that they need a PMO. They bring in someone who is seasoned and is an expert in PMOs and has done this multiple times for multiple different companies. And then they completely, I would say, project managementize the entire situation, where they have tons of templates and tons of processes and tons of tools and tons of structure, and without keeping in mind the culture, the organizational appetite, the maturity, as they will.
Right.
And things are like, oh my God, I wish this thing would just go away. And they're like, all right, you know what? I think we probably need to do a reover, and let's find someone who can help us with that.
You talked about the tools, and we talked about all the fancy consulting terms and all of that stuff, right? For project management. And I get the whole thing about bringing order to chaos, right? I think that, and as an enterprise architect, I like to think that's what I do, and write all of these wonderful things. But at the end of the day, right? I mean, aren't there methodologies, such as SAFe or just agile in general, or even standard waterfall with its gating and all of these things? Don't those methodologies sort of provide some of that rigor, some of that structure?
You can have SAFe, you can have agile, you can have waterfall, you can have hybrid, you can have whatever combination of all these methodologies to deliver the project, but you still need someone who's going to be there to help manage the expectations, to help keep the resources in check, to provide a safe haven for all the project managers to go to when they need help, to someone to remove roadblocks for project managers and program managers and portfolio managers, who's going to have their back, right? That's what a PMO should really be doing, and sitting at the table of with your executive leadership and making sure that the project management resources get what they need to successfully run their projects, right? So methodologies are a means to an end. Somebody needs to take keep an eye out at the overall picture, and that's what the PMO can really do.
So that leads me to a question then, Hussain. In what I see, again, I'm doing events, IT events that have lots of IT people in them, and mostly everybody is kind of hard to find. But more likely than not, the guy that I see who's looking for a gig, who's not fully utilized, he's a PM of some sort. Is it that he's missing some skill that they need? I mean, is that are there just too many PMs? Are they misappropriated, or are they just improperly skilled for these gigs?
So let me answer your question in two parts, Phil. Firstly, I actually work primarily with PMO leaders and not project managers as such. But when I do work with project managers, I'm working with them to transition from being a project manager to becoming a PMO leader. for
Gotcha.
how they should go about, finding a PMO leadership role and leaving the project management role behind. Yes, there are a ton of PMs, and I still see a lot of project management roles out there. But I do feel that because of the abundance of project managers, these project management opportunities that present themselves become very, very, very nichely defined. And so, they're looking for, I need 15 years of this, and I need someone who's got banking experience, who's done, cybersecurity, who's done, blah, 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 and finding and they'll be able to find someone who's got that extreme niche, but, someone who doesn't hit that one checkbox, they go about, missing out.
What is the origin of PMO? Where did this discipline start?
No, so that's a great question, Shashi. I'm not entirely sure about the roots, but I know that one of my good friends, Mark Price Perry, who's one of these PMO gurus, he's also written a book. In fact, he's written a book and also the pioneer of the business-driven PMOs, Mark Price Perry. He did tell me that it did become very much in demand once Sarbanes-Oxley kicked in. So, with the Y2K situation and then the Sarbanes-Oxley situation, where organizations needed to, get their acts together and sort of have things documented and ready for audit and pass those, that's when PMOs became very, very, very popular. So sadly, they became very popular in their administrative nature. But now over, few years later, it's become statistically evident that the PMOs that become, the most successful and valuable to the companies are the ones that have, one of their legs in the strategic nature of things. If they're sitting at the strategy table with the rest of the organization's leaders, PMOs succeed. If not, they won't be around for a while.
What does good project management look like?
Just get things done. I'm not gonna, tell you anything about methodologies. I'm not gonna harp one over the other. But I would say good project management is something where stakeholders and sponsors of the projects can sleep peacefully, knowing that the project is in good hands. Right. And if that's the case, that means that project manager, that program manager, portfolio manager is really doing a bang up job of making sure that, nothing is falling through the cracks, and that things are moving along as expected. And if they're not moving along as expected, they will be advised in a very in a language that they can understand, and have been told exactly what is needed for them to get the project back on track.
I want to harken back to something you said a little bit earlier, which was you said something to the effect of paraphrasing. So correct me if I got this wrong, but you said something to the effect of like, all that really matters in the end is if you delivered a project and you saw the value come out of whatever that initiative was, right? So I guess the question really is like, so is good project management, does it have to follow a methodology? If I wing it, I take no notes and I just, I'm super casual, right? But at the end of the day, shit gets done. Is that not as effective as someone that has all the books and the wall charts and the everything?
Yeah. So let me answer your question in two parts, right? So yes, it does, as long as you're making sure that everybody who needs to know things get to know things, right? Paper trails where sign-offs are required are important, because in not just in the world of project management, but in the world of corporate politics, things do get you get bitten if there is no paper trail associated with it. So I don't think that that's a function of project management. I think that's a function of corporate politics being in play. But I think in definitely in smaller or mid-sized, in small to mid-sized organizations, as well as niche projects of small to mid-sized nature, you could definitely wing it. In fact, putting in all of these things together will probably slow you down. So that's number one. Number two, the concept about measuring the success of the project, I don't think that that's a function of the project manager, I think that's where the PMO comes into play. And the PMO leader is either responsible or accountable for that. Now, in a lot of the situations, when projects get done, they get handed over to the business, or they get handed over to the operations teams for business as usual. So it may not be the function of measuring that success. It may not even, or the metrics that lead to that success may not even reside within the project management group, may reside within those other business elements. But then it's up to the PMO leader to hold those people accountable and say, all right, guys, every 3 months, every 6 months, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to be asking you about metrics A, B, and C. And I want to hear how things are going on so that I can let leadership know that this project that we delivered last week, it really has delivered its business value.
Hussain, just to your piece in there, because you kind of said that one of the things that you saw CIOs do perhaps was, if they've got that PMO envy, right? The guy across the street's got a really nice PMO. We want to have a nice PMO. Does he go, you suggested that he might just go grab his number one project leader and say, I'm going to make you the head of our project management office. Let's imagine that they're not going to start that way, that they're really going to kind of go out into the world or into their team, but they're going to look for certain skills. How do they recognize the person that ought to be running that PMO?
There are a few things that I look at, and I break out the skills of a PMO leader into 4 distinct categories. There's the people skills, there's the organizational skills, there's the functional skills, and then there's obviously the project skills. To me, the project skills are the last to consider. The people skills are the most important to consider. Interestingly, when I've glanced through many project management office leadership opportunities, the job descriptions out there, they're saying PMP preferred MBA, a couple of other things as well in there. So it's a good thing that there people are looking for things around having an organizational awareness or purview. But to me, the best person who could lead the charge with for a PMO like that is someone who's been in the organization for a bit and has the credibility and good solid relationships with key people that the PMO is expected to work with, and most importantly has a reputation of getting things done. It doesn't matter if it's someone within the operations team. It doesn't matter if someone is within the strategy team who has little to no experience in project management. If they have that reputation, then people will work with them, people will listen to them, and that more than anything else is needed for a PMO leader to succeed.
There is a question around when you hire a project manager, how much of the functional skill they need to have. Let's say if it's an IT project, if it's, let's say, I don't know, let's say enterprise service bus project, they should know how the integration thing works. If it's SAP ERP project, they should have past experience running ERP. How much of that skill do you think are valued more than other skills?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Shashi. And I think there are 2 schools of thoughts here. One school of thought is a good project manager is a good project manager is a good project manager. That is, you put that project manager into whatever project, whether it's construction, IT, healthcare, SAP, supply chain, whatever have you, they'll just get it done. And then another school of thought just firmly believes that no, you need to have that sort of functional expertise, like you mentioned, to make sure that the projects get successful. I just think that I am personally of the believer of the former, where a good project manager is a good project manager is a good project manager, because let the project manager take care of project management, and then let's get SMEs to support this project manager. That's why you have your system architects, that's why you have your enterprise architects, that's why you have your business architects, that's why you have all of these SMEs that can help support the project manager. I just think that the project manager needs to be smart enough to know when he or she is being lied to.
I think enterprise architects can be a great project managers too.
Yes, and actually, I think it's because they both deal with people, right? So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Someone should write a book about that.
I think it's if I say, I think there is I call them like a brother, or brothers from different mothers, but it's the ratio of the skill. I mean, project managers probably need 80% of, let's say 70% general skill and 30% technical skills, whereas enterprise architect probably need 60% technical skill, 40% general skill. But largely the skill sets required for both the discipline has quite a bit of overlap. That's what I feel.
So this is very interesting, and I do want to get your reaction to what Shashi just said, Hussain. But I also want to also get some final thoughts here, right? And a takeaway, one takeaway. So Phil, can you give us a takeaway? What are you taking away from this conversation around project management?
Well, I think there's obviously some good ways and bad ways to go about setting this up. And the thing is, I think I might even call somebody like Hussain if I wasn't sure if this is something I wanted to take on or not, right? Are we in fact operationally mature enough to begin this process? I don't know. I think I would ask that question before I got too far down the road. So I think it's a useful conversation.
Shashi, what's your takeaway?
Be wary of project administrators. There are many of them floating around. And for people who are project administrators, don't be one. Try to proactively manage a project, get shit done. That's extremely important. That adds value. Not get stuck in the bureaucracy or the process side of it. Yes, you need lean process to be there to support, but you have to be a hustler. You have to get shit done, get on people's calendar, whatever it takes to get it done. Don't be a nice guy.
Yeah. I mean, I think, when I look at this and, my own experience, I think of all the bad project managers, right, I've known over time, and it gives project management a bad rap, right? Because it gives it the sense that it's an obstacle to getting shit done as opposed to an enabler, right? And I think maybe the distinction, one of the things that I'm taking away from this is the distinction between the project manager, right, and the PMO leader, the leader of the project management office, right, or organization, right? And that is maybe an analogy, right? I'll get the word right eventually. An analogy, right, to that would be the difference. And I think, Shashi, you brought it up, right? A specific application architect and an enterprise architect, right? Someone that has sort of a view of this and can go really deep into this versus someone that has a view that's broader. So to me, that's an interesting thing that I had never really considered before. But Hussain, I'll give you the final thought here since you're our guest. What's one thing that you want people to take away from this conversation about PMs?
So I would say that, when you look at PMOs, and if you think that a PMO is needed for your organization or not, I think you need to go in with an open mind, not look at the bias out there, not try to go ahead and fit yourself within any of the constructs. There are many constructs out there where, people say, what, are you this kind of a PMO? Are you this kind of a PMO? There are many names out there as well. There's a hybrid PMO, there's a modern PMO, there's a PMO 2.0, PMO 3.0, blah, blah, blah. It all really, really doesn't matter. What matters is what kind of a PMO, or rather, what are the challenges that your organization needs help in solving today that the PMO can help with, and that can probably change 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the line. So that needs to be always a refresher that needs to happen. And then, people talk a lot about, organizational maturity. My belief is that if a PMO is either less mature or more mature than the organization needs it to be, it will fail. It has to find that ideal balance. And so it really is looking at, where the organization is in terms of, people, process, tools, strategy, as well as, how far along, how much of project management is actually happening, but also understand their capacity to take new things, to be able to, accept change. And that has to be, that entire process of setting up a PMO has to be a complete engagement from the very word go, where you need to understand what people's needs are, you need to get their feedback, you need to bring them along in the loop. There will always be a few naysayers, but that's totally fine. But keep them make them feel as part of the process, so that when we're actually about to launch the PMO, people feel that, these guys are creating this PMO just for me. And therefore the chances for buying into that PMO are far larger than what the stats are out there.
Right, and probably chances are you'll have more success, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, no, I appreciate this. Where can, if anyone wants to find out more about what you do or read some of your articles, where can they go for that?
They can go onto my site, www.parwazcc.com. That's PARWAZCC.com. Alternatively, they can also just shoot me an email, Hussain@parwazcc.com. And I can, be sure to point them to, some of the guides that I have, my blogs, as well as my LinkedIn learning course as well.
Right, and of course they can find you on LinkedIn. You're very visible out there. So we'll also put the links on the website for this episode. So listen, really appreciate it, Hussain. It's good to see you again. Fun fact, Hussain taught me all about Pakistani rap, which I had never heard before. But you drove me, we were driving somewhere in Alexandria or something like that, and you had it in your car. So I remember that very vividly. So appreciate that. So thank you guys, Shashi, Phil, Hussain. I'm Chris Lockhart. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.
Hey guys, we love having you here with Consultants Saying Things, and we need your help. So subscribe and like, press the bell, let yourself know every time we got a brand new episode out, and you won't miss any of us.